data display. Let's take a closer look inside an element, and more specifically the data display pages. They show you a lot of details with all the metrics, all the parameters, the readings coming back from the data source, together with all the configuration we can do on it. So let's take a closer look at that. So in data display, we will first take a closer look at the general objectives of the data display page, what the layout looks like, things like that. And we will see that it contains pages. So we have different types of pages as well. On those pages, we will find parameters. So we'll take a look at the specifics and the details of the parameters with a couple of more advanced parameters that we will touch upon as well. There are some features specific to the parameters, and then we will also take a closer look at some general data display features like element locking, the search, and multiple sets. So the data display is really about showing you all the key metrics coming back from your data source. You can see an example here, so we can see all the readings, all the details. This, of course, depends on the driver, on the protocol that we are using. So whether we are talking about a Microsoft server in this case, or a Cisco switch, or a cloud encoder, or anything, depending on the driver, you will see different metrics in here. We will take a closer look at a little bit the organization of this page and show you some of the goodies and details that you can find in here. But this is really the place where you go to investigate a problem, to go in more in depth on some configuration, do some settings on there. So that's really where you get into the guts of one specific data source there. Now, the general layout, just quickly, is you will see a header bar with a color-coded bar at the top that is indicated with the overall alarm state of the element. So you can see our element is currently in a green state, so there's also a green bar there, so you can nicely visually see that our device is in a healthy state. You can immediately also see the breadcrumbs, so that's the location in your surveyor tree structure, so you can see where the device is located. Then on the left hand side you have the side panel. Be aware the side panel, you can open it up and close it down with this arrow button here. So if it's closed, you click on it and you have it open there. The visual part, that's for the visual overview module. We'll come back to that. You have a graphical way of presenting your information from this data source. But we will in this module take a closer look at the data page or the data section. Within there all the different pages. Those pages are indicated here and also in the drop down on top. Whether it's there or over here, you can choose that as well in your user settings. So whether it's being visualized here, yes or no, and here, yes or no, that's a user preference. Together with the footer bar. The footer is actually by default not being shown, but you can enable that to see the measurements per second, the availability, and the alarm state timeline there on the right hand side. Now, then we of course have our metrics, our parameters that are being shown. That's something we will take a closer look at then as well on what we can expect there, what the details are of those parameters. Note on the upper right hand side you also have a maximize button. So you can quickly blow up your interface with only that specific device. So that's a convenient shortcut you have available there. Okay, so now those pages. So typically we have a lot of data coming back from our data source. So we have a whole bunch of parameters, and we need to keep that a little bit digestible. So we typically organize that into so-called main pages. Those are the most important ones. You can see an example here on the right hand side where you see a general page. That's a typical page we always have, showing some of the key parameters in there. And then you have details on, in this case, like the receiver, the decoder, the output, the encryption, things like that, that are typical for this type of device. Again, this depends on the driver, on the protocol, on how this is being organized. So If you have some feedback for us on making it more logic, you can easily do so, because the changing of the layout can be easily done in DIS, our DataMiner Integration Studio. So we have a visual editor there to reorganize it, to make new pages, and note that a parameter can be on more than one page. So it can be visualized on the general page and also, for instance, on the decoder page. So we do have that flexibility, and we can easily adapt those layouts. Now, that being said, those general pages, typically we might have some more information, and we don't want to show everything here as main page. Therefore, you could have an expander there, and we could show also what we call pop-up pages. They are being called pop-up pages because you can also launch them from the UI into a pop-up. But you can also access them below that expander there. So those are typically pages that contain a little bit more detailed information, less frequently used information. So we put it like one step further away because we don't want to clutter the main pages with way too many pages on there. It could potentially also be used for parameters that are often used, that because a pop-up page, you can leave it open while you continue to work on something else. The last page we have is the, or type of page we have is the embedded web interface. If the data source itself has a web interface, we can add the embedded web interface immediately, or make it immediately available in here, so that you don't have to look up the IP address or the device or something like that. No, you just click on that page, you have it embedded into DataMiner Cube. Easy, convenient access there. Now, those main pages are also color-coded, so that's very convenient if your equipment or your device or your data source is in an alarm state, like it is over here. It's critical. You can immediately locate the alarm because the pages containing the alarms are color-coded. So you can see there is a problem on the audio page and the demodulator setup page. If it is located on a pop-up page, there is also those pop-up pages that are being color-coded here. So here, this is underneath the general, we have a pop-up page with some device info. As I mentioned, typically it can be used for less frequently used parameters, like the front panel or some chip demodulator switch availability things. Typically not something you use on a daily basis. So some device info we want to hide away a little bit more. Now, those pop-up pages are available behind those buttons here, and those buttons, and that's an important remark, have 3 trailing points, meaning if you click on it, something will follow, another window will follow. So those 3 buttons here are pop-up pages, while this page or this button here is an action button. It doesn't have the 3 dots at the end, the reboot as well. So those are actions that will be executed. There will be a warning or a confirmation after this button, so it's not that it will immediately reboot your device. But be aware that there is a difference between a pop-up page button and an action button, you could say. Now, to show that also in our DataMiner Cube, so here we have our DataMiner Cube connected to our DCP DMA. And if I open up, for instance, a Microsoft element here, you will notice that we have some pages here, some main pages containing the information on the performance, like CPU, memory parameters, handles, threads, things like that. We have a page with some task manager details, so the details on all the processes there, the services, whether they are running or not, network interfaces, disks, etc. But to go back to the performance page, we have the total processor load here. We actually have some more details about the total processor load, actually basically the load on the different cores. That's not something we want to immediately display here because we would have way too many parameters here, but we've put it behind the button there, detailed info. So if you click on that detailed info, you will see you have a pop-up page, like we said, the pop-up pages are here effectively popping up. With the 4 cores, we only have 4 cores on this machine, with the 4 cores and the load on those cores individually. Next to using that pop-up button, you could also expand your performance page and go for the detailed processor info embedded in here. So now this pop-up page is actually shown embedded into my UI, and I can go up to performance to go back. So either you have it in a pop-up or you open it via the side panel menu. Okay, so that's a quick word on the pop-up pages versus main pages, and remember that color coding allows you to quickly locate any alarms on there. There is a special page although on every single element you have in the DataMiner system. It doesn't matter which type of device it is, which protocol it is currently using. That doesn't matter. We always have inside this side panel general parameters. General parameters are something which is not taken from the actual data source, but it is something more hosted inside DataMiner. Just a couple of examples. There's some log status information there, number of active alarms, for instance, or number of active critical alarms. So we have 4 critical alarms on this device. Sometimes this can be interesting, for instance, with correlation. Within correlation, you can access those parameters as well, and you can make that a part of your condition, whether you need to trigger and you need to do something, yes or no. Another interesting one I want to mention, I can show it in here, is if I go to that general parameters page here, is the timer base. The timer base allows you to accelerate or decrease the polling speeds. So by default, we define a certain polling speed, a refresh rate of certain parameters, so that your total processor load is being updated every few seconds. Well, actually, you have the possibility with the timer base. It's basically a multiplier on the timer. So if you put in there 2, it will basically be twice as slow. The timers will be multiplied with 2, or you can put in there 0.5, then everything will be double as fast. Beware, this will be a heavier load, not only on the DataMiner system, but also on the device or system you are polling. So be careful with that. If you slow it down, that might be convenient, for instance, for polling over a satellite link, and you want to slow it down a little bit for certain devices. Anyhow, there also is some more properties and communication info. You can play around with the additional info there. Okay, the last page that I wanted to mention there. So we have the main page, we have the pop-up pages. Those are the most important ones, but there is also a possibility for us to immediately show the web interface of the actual data source inside the DataMiner cube. So in this case, we have some general parameters, some power metering parameters, and we also embedded the web interface. If you click on there, it opens up the web interface inside your DataMiner cube. Note, of course, your client you are working on needs to be able to access this actual device. So it's not going through DataMiner, it's directly opening up that web interface to that device. But it is convenient because I don't have to remember the IP address of the device, things like that. So it is immediately nicely embedding that in here. Can be convenient. Now that we discussed the parameters to keep our, the pages to keep our parameters a little bit organized, let's take a closer look at the parameters itself, the content of those pages. So first of all, we have a distinction between a read and a write parameter. So we have the reading here, the audio output level, and we have the possibility to change it, the write parameter as we call it. So this is what is coming back from the device. If we specify a new value and we apply the new value, it is being sent towards the device or the data source or the system. We immediately pull back the same value to make sure that it is updated. So it might take a second before you see it effectively changing in the read parameter. But if you see it changing in the read parameter, it means that it was effectively accepted by the device, and the device also confirmed that the change or the new value is applicable. So the read and write parameter, we also have a distinction between what we call discrete parameters and analog parameters. A discrete parameter is something with different possible values, like an on, off, or in this case, left plus right, or left or right, or things like that. An analog parameter is basically a number potentially with a digit, ranging from a minimum to a maximum. So that's like the level we have here, the 18 dBm we have. There is a special case, a hybrid, where the number can also have an exceptional value. I'll show you an example of that. Now the read parameters, we have the discrete example here, where we can also see the change or the possibility to change it here as well. And we have an analog here that is also optionally being visualized with a graphical presentation. That is something which is defined in the protocol, whether or not this number needs to be visualized with a graphical presentation. For instance, for the memory utilization, how many gigabytes of memory we are using, we're not going to put that in a progress bar. But for the CPU load with a fixed minimum and maximum, 0 to 100, it might be indeed interesting to see it in a graphical presentation. By default, it will be an LED bar, but if you right click on the total processor load or any parameter that has a graphical presentation, you can switch it also to the oscilloscope. So the difference between the LED bar and an oscilloscope is that the LED bar only shows the current value. But the interesting thing is that the current value is also shown against the current alarm thresholds. So you can immediately see the thresholds at 40 and at 50. We have some thresholds where the parameter might go into alarm. So that's the default that we show. If you switch by right-clicking on the total processor load to the oscilloscope, you will see actually the value over the last minute. Note, this is no performance data, this is no trending coming from the history database. This is just as my session opens, that it will fill up this 1 minute timeline or small trend graph, you could say. So you can see it changing over time, and the background or the fill below the line is the alarm color coding that is being added in there. So you do have an indication when the parameter is in a certain alarm zone, you could say. But it's interesting if a parameter is switching now and then, and you want to see it a little bit, it's only switching very fast. With that oscilloscope, you can have a longer view on what kind of changes it did in the last minute. A small word on some parameters that might pop up in your data display as not initialized. Well, you have two ways. It could be not initialized, like the ones on the right-hand side here, but it could also be not available. Typically, not initialized means that the value has never been retrieved from our data source we're pulling. Maybe there's something that is not activated in the device, or there's no license, that information is not available, there's another firmware version that is not supporting this type of parameter that we want to retrieve. So we asked for it and it didn't came back, and we were not able to actually get that value and show it in the UI. So it's on not initialized. So that's basically the initial state when you start something up in DataMiner as well. The not available, that's something we can enforce as well, and that's typically when the device has no value, when it's not available, like a power supply, a second power supply, a redundant power supply that is not plugged in, something like that. So we can put it on not available, but also a little bit more grayed out. There is a small chance that they implement something in a driver where they actually have the values not being populated because we're not continuously polling it, but that it only does the polling when you open up the data display or this specific page, or you click on a refresh button, or a load button. So if you see somewhere parameters that are not filled in and you have a load button, you might need to click on the load button before it will be populated. Just be aware of that, not initialized, not available, that might pop up in Cray. So that was a little bit on the readings from the data source we have in our data display. Now, if we want to do some configuration and some changes on our equipment or our systems we are managing, then we need to use our write parameters. We have here the graphical presentation to change a analog, like a number. So if we want to change that 18, you can use a slider, you can use the up down, you can just type in there, there will be a validation, and you can click on the green check box or check mark to send it to the device. Remember, if you change a parameter, it is being sent to the device. The reading will not immediately adapt. Only when we get a confirmation back from the device and we pull the new value, you will see it reflected in the read parameter. Here we have that example of a hybrid parameter, so the delay time, so it's a number, a time span as well, but you can also go for an exceptional value not used. So that's what we call a hybrid parameter. It's a number or time in this case with an exceptional possible value there not used on there. Small side note, if you right click on the value, you can also copy that 18 or copy that 18 to the display edit or the value editor immediately as well. A quick shortcut. If we are talking about the discrete parameter, remember the discrete parameter is something with possible values like on, off. In this case, we have absolute, not used, relative possible values here. So we can choose it from a drop-down, make our choice and apply it to the equipment or the device. If there are only two possible values, like an on-off or tracking, no tracking in this case, you can actually use like a toggle button. So that allows you to switch between like an on-off. So that's a more compact way of visualizing it. And if we are talking about like a name or something or an IP address, then we have an edit field where we can just type in the name. Maybe there's some limitations in length or only capitals are accepted, things like that can be validated in there as well. Okay, just also a small setting, user preference that I want to mention here is there is some possible tweaking you can do with the UI. So by default, we have a certain layout. I'll show you an example here immediately as well. So we have a certain layout where we each time have our parameter name and the current value. Well, as indicated in the slide, you can go to settings and you can actually change those what we call data display settings here. So in the section data display settings, and you can change your parameter display mode instead of normal to light. Let me apply that and immediately show that to you. So what happens is this is immediately changed, and it actually has already some tweaking that I did earlier, where we can choose the font of the parameter title or description and of the value. So for instance, I can say, the value I want it to be displayed in bold as well. So let me change that and OK, and apply that or OK that. Now our value is a little bit bigger, is in bold, so you can tweak those parameters, how they are being displayed. It is being called light. Why is it being called light? Well, the audio output level is now only displayed in one line. So you noticed maybe that our total processor load is no longer showing the LED bar. So the light mode of the parameter display mode is basically removing the graphical presentation so that everything is on one line. And note, if you want to do editing Also, the editing is being removed from the initial display, and you need to use a pencil icon. So if I go to another device with a write parameter on there, you will see that I need to click on the pencil icon, and then I have my slider and my value editor with the spin buttons available. I can go back by closing it again as well. So you can see the light mode is making things a little bit more compact by removing the things that you don't need, like the LED bar and the value editor. Only when needed you can click and go through the editor. All right, just as a side note, that is. Now a special parameter, special, not that special, is a table. And that is often being used, and we see it a lot because we have typically tables with massive amounts of information, whether it's a table with interfaces or with transport streams or with services, doesn't really matter, but typically we have these kind of like lists that could also have more or less items in there. And that's a compact way of showing a lot of information in a condensed way. We do see here on our screenshot an example of the Cisco Manager, the detailed interface table. So what's a little bit special about that? Well, the graphical presentation of the alarming is happening in the background. The cell color coding is indicating whether it is an alarm or not. And the editing also happens inside the cell. So you have the pencil icon to go to the editor, and basically inside the cell you will have that editor, or you will have on the right hand side the possibility to toggle between the on-off there. I can show you, let me show you on another system with our Cisco Manager here. And if I go to the detailed interface table, for instance, you will see that we have our VLAN here, not VLAN, the custom description. So you can click on there, and immediately in there you can change that. The up-down state is here indicated with buttons, and we have our VLAN or interval, for instance, the interface interval. These kind of things you can easily change inline. And as I mentioned, the color coding in the background for the alarming is indicated there. And note there is also a filter box. So if you're looking for a specific, something that contains digital, you will find immediately your interface containing the trunk to the 80 digital with all the details next to that. So that search is quite convenient. You also have the possibility to maximize it, a table. So next to the filter you have this maximize button, allowing you to really use all the screen real estate for this table only. And if I maximize my cube, I'm only focused now on that interface table, and I can easily work with that and see as much details as my screen can fit. Okay, that's about the most important thing for a table. One other special parameter is a matrix. If we have something with a number of inputs and outputs where we can set cross points, as you can see on the right hand side here, we have the inputs and we have the outputs, and we can make cross points there. This is the graphical presentation we can make for this. So you can just click on any cross point to set a cross point, or to deselect a cross point, or to remove the cross point, you could say. Note there is always a confirmation for a cross point setting, because this editor, you could maybe click on the wrong cross point very easily. So whenever you click, there will be always an extra confirmation that you need to give before it will be applied. Now going into a little bit more details, if you right click on the matrix, you have a number of options in the right click available in the edit. You will first of all have the edit with the inputs and the outputs where you can do a little bit of tweaking. What can you do? First of all, you can enable or disable it. So you do have the possibility to say like, oh, I'm only using a small number of inputs and the other ones I don't want to visualize them. You can actually disable them and they are going to be removed from the UI. You can also give it a more meaningful description, a label, so that you have not just input 1, 2, 3, but a more meaningful name. And you can organize them on pages. If you have a large number of inputs and outputs, it might be convenient to create pages. That's the screenshot here, where we see outputs 1 to 16, and you can actually click on there and it collapses, and then you have the collapsed summary view of the outputs 17 to 32 that are being indicated here. If you click on it, it opens up. So that allows you to have everything collapsed and just focus on one set of inputs, one set of outputs. You do also have the possibility to configure the allowed. So the third input here, you could say it is allowed with these outputs. So basically the screenshot here where IRD1 can only be connected to the first 5 outputs, but not the last 3 outputs. Those are being disabled. That's not a valid configuration, so you're not able to make that invalid configuration. What else is available in the right-click menu next to that editing? We can also do some copies, but you can export it to a CSV and import that back, for instance, to do some bulk editing. You can also save them and load them later on. So if you have a specific configuration, you can easily save it and have specific configurations available to easily load one or another configuration, or to load it from one matrix to another one. Next to that, we also have the possibility to search, especially that's interesting when you have a lot of inputs or outputs. You click on the magnifying glass and you have the possibility to filter on the inputs or the outputs, and it immediately shows you the matches in there. Next to that, we can also do what we call a lock that allows you to lock an input or an output so that they can no longer change that. And we also have a follow mode. A follow mode is available on an output, and it basically allows you to configure one specific output to follow another output. So this follow mode basically allows you to say like, oh, just mimic the same inputs that I choose for another output. So whenever you're doing some changes on the output 1, for instance, the output 8 will nicely follow, because maybe there's some monitoring attached to that needs to follow whatever you're sending out in your network. So the follow mode is also a nice convenient feature. Okay. Now that we've discussed a little bit the special parameters as well, or more advanced parameters, let's take a look at the parameter features. The parameter features, that's basically located inside or drilling down into a specific parameter. Let me go back to my Microsoft server, for instance. If I go to the performance page, and if I double click on a parameter, I basically drill down into a parameter. Note this parameter has trending or performance data activated, so that's the default it shows. But I'm here on the trending page. I can go to the details page. That's what I'm talking about in this session. We'll come back to trending in one of the following videos. If you want to go back, you can go up to data display. If I go to the available physical memory, double click on there, it will immediately show you the details because there is no trending. So in the details page, you will find some more details, like for instance, the ID, that's an internal ID of a parameter that is available there, and when the last change was detected. And that's an interesting one. In this case, the total processor load is continuously being polled, and it's typically a different value, so that will continuously change. But if it's a configuration setting, you can actually see when that configuration setting was last changed and by whom. So if I open up maybe in a new card another device where I can do a setting on there, if I drill down into my output gain, you will see that it has last changed somewhere when the element was started probably. Let me change it to 6. Now you can see the last change has been done at this time, what we currently are. Show the server time. And it's being done by Bert van den Bergen. And that's interesting because there you can immediately see who did that change. So if you see a parameter, you drill down into it and you can see the last change and by whom. If it's being executed by automation or correlation, it will be indicated as well that automation or correlation is triggering that change there. Underneath the last change, we do see also some description, like in this case, this parameter represents the gain of the analog output stage of the IRT. Actually, this information is also available in the tooltip, but the tooltip is only available when I go back to my normal view. Let me quickly do that. So in here, you will also see that information in that tooltip. This parameter represents the gain. So if you drill down, you go to the details, you see that over there as well. Typically, that's information we get from the user manual or the API, remote API document we have for that data source, where we can see some more details what this parameter specifically is. And for the total processor load, we also see some alarm statistics for the last 24 hours or the last week. So you can choose on the upper right-hand side. So in the last week, for instance, I see we had 11 criticals and a lot of majors and a lot of minors. So maybe I have to revisit my alarm thresholds, because if I take a look at, those are the number of alarms. If I take a look at the percentage of time it has been an alarm, well, it's almost like all the time normal, and only a very minor percentage of time it has been an alarm. So I have some very short alarms on this parameter, and that's probably because maybe I need to put some hysteresis on the alarm threshold, or a larger hysteresis there, because CPU typically might spike now and then, and I don't want to actually generate an alarm each time it does so. So that's something we will be able to configure later on during the administrator parts. So drill down into a parameter to see the details page, go back up to data display with that button to go back to your data display. A special case parameter dependency that I want to briefly mention here is it is possible that parameters are depending on each other. We actually have two cases for that, and the first possible way of or the driver defining or the protocol defining a dependency is that in this case, for instance, I specified a time on like 2, and it is immediately asking me to confirm a dependency. Well, is it hours or minutes or days? Because apparently we have two parameters, the units and the number, that are related to each other. So it is possible that two parameters are depending on each other, and there might be an additional dependency confirmation that we give in a pop-up. The other possibility for dependencies is that the number of possibilities in a certain drop-down that you can configure on a specific parameter might be different depending on another setting. For instance, if I configure my device to be in HD mode or in 4K mode, I might have a drop-down with different resolutions, for instance, different possibilities in there. So depending on a certain setting on your device, another parameter might have more or less or other possible values in there. That's basically the second possibility here. All right. Whenever I do a set on a parameter, there will be a confirmation. If you are bothered about that, you can don't show this warning again. You can activate that, and it won't ask for a confirmation anymore. Through your user settings, you can activate it again if you would like to change your mind afterwards. So that's a user setting where you can enable or disable that. There are, although, two exceptions. There will always be a confirmation whenever you do a set on a matrix, the inputs-outputs crosspoint setting. That will always come along with a confirmation box. And there is also a possibility that they will put an additional confirmation or enforce that inside the protocol. If I, for instance, have my device here again, I believe there is somewhere on the general reboot button. If I click on the reboot button, the pop-up is over here. If you reboot the device, it might be unavailable for a minute. Do you want to continue, yes or no? So that's a confirmation that is enforced with a custom text inside a driver. So we do have that possibility there as well. So sometimes you might have always a pop-up appearing. Just as a side note, whenever you do a setting on a device or on an element, there will be extensive validation embedded into the driver where we check if you're still within limits, the minimum, the maximum range, the step size, validation of the length or the capitalization, all these kind of things will be validated. If something would not be correct or not be within those specifications, you would get a notification, like in this case, an out of range that you typed in the edit box, for instance. That will be validated, and you need to correct that before we apply it onto the device or the data source. Maybe you noticed already, but certain parameters have this kind of trend indication. That's a quick link. It's a single click button that allows you to dive into that parameter to see the trend graph. So if I click on there, it immediately goes to the trending. We'll discuss the trending later on in another module or in another video. But you might also see that certain parameters have certain indications here. So like the web service connection has a downwards trend, and it's actually in the tooltip indicating it's decreasing by 17 per day. Those ones are quite stable. If there is no indication, then it means that the parameter is too erratic to actually make any sense out of it. So in here we have the physical memory going down and the free virtual memory going down. So that allows you to immediately see in one blink of an eye, okay, my total processor load, it's stable. Oh, the web service connections, it's actually going down. And then you click on it, you drill down into the parameter, and you can see more details with the full trend graph, which we will discuss in another video. Three more items I want to mention in this module is, first of all, element locking, then search and multiple set. The element locking, we are working in a multi-user environment. So it is perfectly possible I'm opening up an element and I'm starting to configure and changing settings on there, and suddenly somebody else opens up the same element on another machine, on another computer somewhere else, and he's also changing parameters on there. We could be working together. I mean, we could be saying like, okay, let's do this together, and we are both working on it. We will see our changes also on both screens. But sometimes you want to lock the element only for you. You want to make sure that nobody interferes with your settings. And that can also be used by the automation engine. So if an automation script is being executed, it can say, oh, let's lock the elements, let's do my configuration, and then I will unlock my element again. That's the locking. You can find it in the hamburger menu. So if I go to the hamburger menu, I can go for the lock element in there. If I lock the element, it is indicated with the yellow banner at the bottom that this is being locked by Bert Vandenbergen. You can right click it and you can unlock it again. And note that if you have administrator rights, or there is a special administrator right to do a force unlock. So if somebody would lock an element and he would not unlock it and he goes on holiday, it is possible to do a force unlock as an administrator. So you do still have that flexibility. I'll unlock it again to make sure that other people can also work on this device again. So that unlock is also a force unlock available as administrator. Okay, simple, but might come inconvenience. Search, as I mentioned before, an element can contain a lot of parameters. A lot of information might come back from certain data sources, and sometimes it's a little bit maybe difficult to find a certain parameter. Well, that search will definitely help you out. It's located in your side panel, so you need to open up your side panel by clicking on the arrow, and then you can search in there. The nice thing is that the search also gives you immediately an autocomplete or some suggestions in there. So if I start searching for memory, then it will immediately give me some suggestions. It does already the filtering on the right hand side. But maybe I'm looking for free virtual memory, then I can immediately select it from the drop down and I have my free virtual memory. So that allows you to quickly find certain parameters. For instance, with web services, I have some parameters. So if I type in web service, I do see my web service connections, the attempts per hour, and the maximum number of connections I have on this machine. There are a couple of special keywords that are mentioned here. The possibility to search and only show all the parameters that have trending activated, the performance data activated, for a certain severity. Or you can also go for a negative search and you can use double quotes for exact searches, because normally a space is like an or, but if you use exact searches with the double quotes, the spaces are taken as one word, you could say. Let me check. I don't have any alarms on here, but I do have an alarm on this one, for instance. So if I want to find everything in alarm, I can just start typing severity, and I can go for any of those different alarm thresholds: warning, minor, major, critical, or just in alarm. And apparently I have a couple of properties and some left test level in alarm. Of course, I do also have the possibility to go to the alarming. That's something we will discover later on. But if you're looking for a specific parameter to immediately change it maybe as well, that might come in handy. So remember that search, open up the side panel, just type in a keyword and it will filter down your list of parameters to the ones that you are looking for. As a final thing, we have multiple sets. Well, actually we have two ways of doing a multiple set in the DataMiner system. We also have the possibility to do multiple set across different elements. We are here not yet talking about that. That's coming up later on. Here we are still inside one single element. We're getting into the details of one single element. And we do have the possibility there to do multiple sets, like configure different parameters and then in one go push it to the data source. That's the multiple set we are talking about here. So what you can actually do is you can configure in your data display a bunch of different settings, and they will all be standing by, and it will be indicated with a yellow bar that you can do a save all. You will get a pop-up to confirm all your pending changes, and in one go you can push it to the device. Let me do that with a quick example. So if I change a couple of parameters or configure a couple of new values for some of my settings here. So I have like 4 pending changes. They are all indicated. And how can I see they are indicated? Well, they have like a little triangle there or arrow, and they are actually still highlighted, because normally when I move my mouse over one of those editors, they highlight and then they dim out. Well, they don't dim out anymore on the ones that have pending changes. So I have 4 pending changes standing by. At the bottom, I can see that save all that is standing by there. If I click on the save all or any of the green checkbox marks, if I click on there, it shows me the pop-up like, oh, you have multiple pending changes. I can verify those. I can still do it one by one, or I can go for the all. If I just do maybe 1, the 3 here, it changes to 3, and then the all and the ones on the right hand side will now also change. So in one go, you can do multiple changes on the device. So maybe you want to first investigate it and have it all nicely lined up, and then in one go, you push it, the new configuration to the device. Small feature, but is definitely handy. Okay, so that was a little bit of an introduction on the data display. So we dived into one specific device. We opened up the data display. We have the different pages there, the main pages and the pop-up pages with some more details and potentially some web interfaces. On one page, you have all the different readings coming back depending on the driver, where we took a closer look on reading and write parameters as well, doing some settings on the device. A table, we had the matrix as well as a special one. And then we had some features that were available, drilling down into a parameter, seeing some trend icon indications there. And then we also had the possibility to do some element locking, some searching inside the data display, and finally we had that multiple set as well. So that gives you a nice overview already of the insights of an element. In the next module, we'll take a closer look at documents. Okay, see you next time.